Now on News9 Plus. Download now.
Namaskaram, the South Indian is here and today's story actually cuts across all regions. It's a story which involves all of us, actually the entire world. But so far as you speak about India, the South Indian is here to tell you that we all need to be alert but create no panic. That's the intent of today's show. You know, it's become the new C word. Ever since the world shut down almost 3 years ago, when we all discovered and coped with COVID, there has been much alarm. And on this show, I said it and I am saying it yet again. That is exactly what we shall not do. Not create panic, but understand what is this new variant which has reared its head yet again. Even as the world is gearing up for the festive season to celebrate both Christmas and New Year, a new COVID-19 subvariant JN.1 has reared its head yet again in Singapore. In the first week of December, the estimated number of COVID-19 cases rose to 56,043. And the country is of course on high alert. At home, Kerala is seen to be particularly vulnerable as it has been detected in Thiruvananthapuram and Kannur districts. A case of COVID-19 subvariant JN.1 was detected in a 79-year-old woman from Kerala. And that, I think, set off a lot of discussion and also panic. And like I said, there is no need to really panic. According to Kerala Health Minister Veena George, who cautioned people to take enough precautions, she said, and I am quoting her here, she said very clearly that there is no need for any concern. It's a subvariant. It was just found here. Months ago, this variant was detected in a few Indians who were screened at the Singapore airport. It just said Kerala has identified the variant here through genome sequencing. There is no need to worry. The situation is being closely monitored. That is what Veena George has said. That is the Health Minister of Kerala. So far as India's, please take note. I am not saying Kerala. So far as India's COVID-19 active caseload is concerned, it rose to 1,828, while one death was recorded in Kerala. Even as we speak, in all there have been 4 deaths. The state, of course, where the COVID subvariant has been detected. According to Union Health Ministry data, that is what the Union Health Ministry has so far said. Now, Karnataka is also on high alert as it shares a border with Kerala. Health Minister Dinesh Gundurao has said that the COVID-19 Technically Advisory Committee, that is TAC, shall meet on 19th of December to discuss the impact of the new COVID-19 subvariant.
So nothing to get too worried about, but only thing is because number of cases have increased there, and Karnataka as of now today and in the entire state, as per our records, we have about 58 active cases, and in that 11 are hospitalized and remaining are at home. And so far the last 3 months we have had one death due to COVID, but also they had other comorbidities. So the person who died had a lot of other issues, but also he had COVID. So that is one thing, but otherwise we have already taking precautionary measures. We have told to increase testing in all the hospitals and health centers. Who was coming with the symptoms of cough and flu and other COVID-like symptoms, respiratory infections, whatever that is there, for all of them to start testing for COVID. So RT-PCR kits, we need to get more So we have already started the purchase for getting more RT-PCR kits and rapid antigen tests, all those kits that are necessary. We have some in stock, but we'll be requiring more. So we will amp up testing. Then through that we will come to know whether the infections are there or on the rise or not. Post that, then we can take a decision what to do.
Dinesh Gundurao also said that of the 58 active COVID-19 cases currently in Karnataka, 11 have been hospitalized, 5 are in ward and 6 are in the ICU, while the remaining are in home isolation. There have been no deaths, however, reported in the past 2 months. However, one death of a 64-year-old has been reported from a Bengaluru hospital on 15th of December. The patient, like you heard the minister say just now, had multiple comorbidities, and COVID-19 was of course an additional thing. You know, Karnataka has also now said that anybody who is 60 years and above should be wearing a mask. And here's what Karnataka CM had to say about the matter.
ಕೇರಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಹೆಲ್ತ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಗೆ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಪ್ರಿವೆಂಟಿವ್ ಮೆಜರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ತಗೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ.
You know, we are going to be joined by an expert who knows the COVID, the ailment, the infection, the stories, the narrative like the back of his palm. So, I am no expert, but so far, for the benefit of the viewers, this is what we know about this subvariant. For one, it's considered to be a descendant of the Omicron subvariant BA.2.86 or Pirola. I don't know whether you should say decimal or dot. That the doctor will tell us. Oh, I just told you it's going to be a doctor. Going by its trajectory, it was first detected in the United States in September of 23, and later China reported 7 infections of the same subvariant as recently as 15th of December. The subvariant was identified in a woman in Kerala, raising concerns even as the Union Ministry of Health initiated preparedness measures. Now, what is also being said is that this BA.2.86 has a total of 20 mutations on the spike protein, which is a cause of concern, and I promise you that's one of the questions I'm going to ask the doc. What are the symptoms? On your screens right now, there is mild fever, there is cough, there is discomfort in the nasal passages, there is sore throat, runny nose, pain or pressure within the face, there is headache and gastrointestinal issues. Let's of course speak to the expert to understand what is going on, and to ensure there is absolutely no panic, Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, co-chairman, National IMA COVID Task Force and former president of IMA Kochi, Kerala, joins us on this show. Dr. Jayadevan, Rajeev, as I call you, very, very warm welcome to you. How are you doing?
Very well, Sudha. How are you?
I'm very well. You know, we've done many shows on COVID, and I think that, you know, wherever we've been, we've just kind of, there's been carpet bombing to understand what it is, because like I said, it's become the new C word, Rajeev, as it were. First question, because a lot of people in my office are also traveling to Kerala for Christmas, they're going to Karnataka for Christmas, so on and so forth, also traveling abroad. First question that they said, which I think the first question which I was also thinking about, do we have to live with this forever, Rajeev?
Good question, Sudha. Yes, if you look at the experience of the past 4 years, it appears that we have a new addition to the cyclical virus family. There are a bunch of viruses that cause what we call cyclical diseases. They come and go with intervals of several months in between. COVID seems to have acquired that pattern. It's not the same interval everywhere. India, we've had a good 7 months with very little COVID. If you look back, the last mini surge, if you will, was in April. It did not overwhelm the hospitals. But now, over the past few weeks, we are seeing an uptick in cases. In fact, we had reported a slight uptick from Cochin earlier this month, alerting that it is the beginning of the next wave. Now, this JN.1 is an all-new variant. It is not your usual variant that we keep hearing in the news. It is not. it is markedly different from anything that the world has seen before. But fortunately, the limited information we have so far suggests that the clinical presentation is the same as generic Omicron. Omicron, as most of our viewers know, is one of the milder versions of COVID virus that started its journey perhaps from South Africa in November of 2021. So we are in 2024, almost in 2024 now. It is still the Omicron season, but JN.1 is a vastly different version. So we don't really have a good feel for which way it's going to go. Looking at worldwide trends, we can expect a rise in cases, but in India, as you know, testing of anyone who comes with fever and body ache and a sore throat, people are not going to be wanting to be tested for COVID at this stage in the pandemic. So testing is actually quite low. It's restricted to certain academic centers, and now with the government advisory, yes, they've ramped it up. But the bottom line is the numbers we see on the screens or in the news reports will not reflect what is happening in the community. So you asked if, are we going to live this forever? Are we going to have to live with this forever? I would say, well, perhaps it's increasingly likely that we will have periodic surges like this. We had said this even during earlier surges. So this is what the future seems to look like. It's continuously evolving, finding ways to evade our immune response. We did a good initial vaccination campaign, which gave people some immune memory when there was nothing at all. But from there onwards, we've had multiple cycles of infection with a changed version of the virus.
So
the virus
Dr.
is so
Jaydevan,
changed now that
No,
the vaccines we use
the second
are based on
question
the
is,
original version.
the second question is that what do we know about this subvariant? Because every variant, the one thing one hears is that not much is known about this, except for how does it present itself? Pretty much like influenza, you know, the viral fever that we all get. There is a runny nose, there is a headache, there is, you know, kind of your sinuses hurt and stuff like that. Is there any other thing that we can possibly, you know, you're right, the testing has also gone down. A lot of politicians have come on air and said, oh, COVID will never happen, although you say no, never say never ever, because it may just happen. But is there any distinctive feature of this variant like Omicron, like, you know, okay, how do I put it? Are we supposed to be scared of this? Is it a scary one?
Yeah, being afraid is a subjective term. It is really not a matter of science. But in my opinion, being scared occurs when we do not know the facts, when we are not clear, we don't know the outcomes. So now at least we know from past 4 years, the numbers, the figures, the percentages, the mortality rates. We know a couple of facts for sure. One, the risk of the COVID virus increases with age, and while the elderly are in fact heroes who have survived many setbacks to life and have got there, this is one additional threat that comes in their way, and they have to remain careful not to get the infection. That's one. Second is people who are not necessarily older but who have unfortunately chronic conditions of assorted nature, and they can destabilize and end up in the hospital and have bad outcomes sometimes. So those are individuals who should be very careful, and that's really what we saw the government recommendations for wearing masks among the elderly in Karnataka, as I was watching the news before it came on. So that's a good move. At least it gives a message that at least during a surge, be a little careful. So you don't want to invite this virus home. I wouldn't be scared of it in that sense, not so much as we did in 2020 when there was carnage around the world, and in 2021. It is not the same severity anymore, but we know of isolated instances where a whole family is affected, but only the older person had a bad outcome. So we must always respect that part of the virus and use discretion. I would use the word discretion rather than being scared when such surges are going on. Typically, surges in India or elsewhere, they last 2 months, 3 months top. So we just have to buckle up a little bit for the next 2 or 3 months. Be a little careful. Stop that maybe not attend a social gathering if you don't have to. Stay home if you're feeling feverish, so you don't spread any virus around, COVID,
All right.
influenza, or otherwise. Don't visit hospitals for social purposes.
All right.
You know, back in Kerala, we have this culture of large
Rajiv,
numbers
just
of
hold
people
your
visiting
thought there. I have to take a break. I'm going to come back to you, ladies and gentlemen. Time for a break, but don't miss the show. I'm coming back in a bit because we have Dr. Rajiv Jaydevan with us discussing the new variant of COVID.
तो जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा सलमान खान का करेंगे मारेंगे यहीं जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा
This is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
Student organization of Punjab University में सोपू का acting president type भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on date, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today, he's India's most dangerous gangster, and India's presence are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
All right, I'm back and I'm discussing about the new subvariant, and of course Kerala is on high alert and so is Karnataka. I'm talking to Dr. Rajiv Jaydevan. Doctor, I want to know, in this context of this subvariant and overall narrative, one keeps hearing the word Pirola. Is it Pirola or Pirola? I don't know how you pronounce it. But why is it so important? Why does this word keep coming up when you do searches? What is with this?
There are different versions of the virus ever since the onset of the pandemic. And the technical terms deal with alphabets and numbers, and people are not comfortable with alphabets and numbers, it seems. So many amateurs have come up with Greek names, mythical names, the ones that you mentioned. So I don't use those.
Okay.
Because I stick with pure science. I don't have a problem with using it, but I simply don't. As a matter of principle, I simply don't. I just stick with the official classification, and I think JN.1 is not so hard to pronounce. So I would stick with JN.1, and you saw how popular these names became, and that's really why they show up on your search engines.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why people name these variants, because they become a little bit more relatable, if you will.
Okay, so what is also being said is that the BA.2.86 has a total of 20 mutations apparently on the spike protein, which is a cause of concern because viruses use spike proteins to latch on to the cells of the host. Greek for me, you know, so please decode this for the audiences. We've been getting a lot of queries on this. Like I said, it's the festive holiday season. Everyone is so worried. I just met my colleague Jacob Matthew outside, and he's going to Kerala, and he said, what happens to us? I said, don't panic, Jake, just wear a mask and be careful. But can you just decode this for us, please?
Okay. So we know that the virus, this particular virus, has a body like a ball with some pins on it. Right? We've all seen the pictures of the virus. Now these pins that are stuck onto the tennis ball, if you will, these are the pins these pins are called the spike protein, and the spike protein is like a key that turns a lock on our body cell. Now the key keeps changing. The virus keeps changing its keys.
Right.
So the JN.1 has come with a completely different key. So our antibodies, which were made against the old version of the virus, might not fit this particular virus, which is why it will infect people who've either had past infections, vaccinations, boosters, or combinations of the above. So we often were told that if you had COVID once, you're safe, you can get back to normal. No, it's not like that. This thing keeps coming at you regardless of your prior immune exposure. So that is a significant change from the initial narrative, especially from Western nations. when the vaccines were being rolled out. We were told that once you have the vaccine, you'll be okay. No, some of us had predicted that will not be the case because this is coronavirus families and you can't defeat coronavirus with a vaccine. It's never been done before. But regardless, vaccines kept the severity down, that's for sure. They prevented many deaths, that's for sure. But what they did not do very well was to stop infections. And the more changes the virus brings on, the more difficult it is for these vaccines to keep them from infecting you. And that's the reality.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, those who are watching this show, the South Indian, I've told you that there is no reason to panic. It's just about taking enough precautions. Kerala, is battle ready to kind of meet with any kind of exigencies, emergencies as it were. But Dr. Jayadevan, one question is about the spread of this. Now, when I asked you, I remember asking you this even earlier and you said it will spread. The thing is, you have to take precautions. Why did you get it despite whatever? I can't tell you. You just have to be very, very careful. But is it also true that every variant spread rate, as it were, is different? This one spreads very rapidly, or that's a myth?
It's a good question. The spread of this virus, I'll explain how it works. Different viruses spread differently. For example, influenza spreads predominantly through droplets, which is why we encourage cough etiquette. You don't cough onto your hand because you might touch somebody else and then pass on the virus to other people. So hand washing is extremely important for infections such as influenza, not so much for COVID. Now, COVID spreads through what is called aerosols, which basically is something like mist. We've all seen mist. If you look closely at mist, it's invisible, but from far, you can see it. So these are tiny, suspended, weightless droplets of liquid in the air that are generated from our airways. And so they carry the virus and they travel around in a room, especially if it's a closed space, and it infects other people as it enters other people's lungs through their breath. So that's how this virus spreads predominantly, and that's really why we encourage masks, especially in indoor gatherings. So the advantage of masks, as much as I hate wearing them, I don't have a problem admitting that I hate wearing masks because I simply don't feel comfortable wearing them. But at the same time, I look at them like if I'm riding a motorcycle, I should have a helmet on for safety purposes. Likewise, if I'm caught in a situation where I perceive there is high risk of virus spread, I will wear a mask. And the good thing about mask is that it is variant proof. The virus can change whatever genes it wants, but it cannot get past my mask. So that's the one good thing about mask, if there is such a thing.
All right. The other thing is that, a lot of myths have been busted ever since we faced COVID, as it were. Even about heart attacks, heart ailments, they said if you're young, it doesn't, now we are seeing cases, doctor, every day where they are pretty young, they are very fit, never smoked or touched a drop of alcohol, and they are falling by the wayside. I mean, I don't wish anyone, but then you see people who've been actually gym rats who are falling by the wayside. Now, about COVID also, earlier it was said, oh, it's going to attack you because you're above 50, you're above 60, you have comorbidities. Then we heard a lot of people. Now, this particular, do variants also choose, does it choose its victim, or is there any age group which is particularly vulnerable?
There isn't any age group that's vulnerable to this virus in terms of spread. It spreads equally across all age groups. But what is true is that younger people tend to socialize more by virtue of their social life, through their professional life, their travel and so on. So they are more likely to pick up the virus and pass it on to other people who might be at home. So that is the one reason why younger people tend to pick up this infection more often than other people. Now, the question you raised about the sudden death is a different topic altogether. Sudden death is a topic that I had addressed in several of my articles. And very briefly for our audience, I'll say this, that sudden deaths are a phenomenon that occur very rarely, and they're very tragic, very unfortunate, but they've occurred for as long as medicine existed, as long as man existed. It's just that they've become prominent. They've been hitting the news only lately, but many people have started tying in with all sorts of, they've added lots of insinuations to it. The truth is that there are many reasons why people die suddenly. Predominantly, it has got to do with abnormal heart rhythms, which can occur in people who drink excessively, smoke excessively, they do not exercise, people who have family history of sudden death. Yes, the risk of sudden death occurring between 35 and 45 for Kerala, that was published in 2011, is 1 in 1,700 adults every year.
Yeah, so
I
just brought this up because, like myths, it was a myth which has been busted now. COVID also busted a lot of myths for us. Tell me, Dr. Jayadevan, how ready is India? How ready is Kerala? Kerala just had a very bad bout of Nipah also. A lot of people were asking me again, why Kerala? Nipah you hear in Kerala, you hear COVID in Kerala. The point is maybe because there is a lot of traffic of people coming from abroad. I do not know. But the more relevant question here, Dr. Jayadevan, is how ready are we? I mean, is it that we shall be caught unawares? Because after the initial spurt of COVID and lots of deaths that we were all locked up inside, we saw that everything eased off. Those beds, those wards were actually folded up. So, India as well as Kerala, how good are we to kind of face any kind of an emergency, as it were?
I believe that the entire country is well equipped to face an emergency. From an immune standpoint, we are a well-vaccinated nation. We have adequate levels of immune exposure in the community, which means that the chance of severe disease happening is actually quite small. But being a large nation, if we allow the virus to spread to very large numbers of people, yes, a small percentage of them will fall sick. So we don't want that to happen. So we need to watch how this new variant does every week, week after week. Being an all-new variant, I'd be a little guarded in making very long-term forecasts. I've heard some very sweeping statements saying that it is nothing. No, it doesn't work like that. I'll give you an example. In Peru, when dengue broke out in Peru earlier in the year, some statements were made saying that it is just nothing. But it rose to such severe proportions there to declare a national emergency. So never underestimate the power of an infective agent. They are tiny organisms, but they can overpower you. So, and on the other hand, there is no need to spread panic about this. It's about observing, looking at the data, looking at numbers, and making a reasonable forecast.
All right, Dr. Jayadevan, hold your thought there. It's time for me to take yet another break, but I shall be back and ask a few more questions which concerns you and I. Stay with us.
BrahMos, stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The Warship Killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now. China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it. It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. This and more. Streaming on the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
He thought he could outlast us. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room.
Who will blink first?
So far from preventing the expansion of NATO, Russian actions have actually resulted in the expansion of NATO.
It's a mess for Russia and it's a mess for the Western world, for NATO and the United States.
Putin is a dictator, and if he loses, that means the end of his regime, and probably of him personally. So he has to keep going.
Year 2, no end in sight. Streaming now.
They picked my husband. He was tortured there for 2 years. He was enforced disappeared. We had no idea where he is. Within 15 minutes, we got the information that the whole area is surrounded by Pakistan army. I came out from that in disguise, and after 5 to 6 hours, I was in Kandahar. I don't have any message for Pakistan. There is no politician in Pakistan. They are puppets of Pakistan army.
Streaming now. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. We are in conversation with Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, co-chairperson, National IMA COVID Task Force and former president, IMA Kochi. In Kerala, we are going to speak about the spread of a new variant of COVID and how Dr. Jayadevan is doing his best to say what we always say, that do not please panic, just stay calm, take all the precautions. And you and I are going to be just fine in this festive season, even as we take planes and trains to meet our loved ones across the globe. Dr. Jayadevan, you know, people have just WhatsApped me the same thing, said, hey, I'm fully vaxxed, so what is this? Now in the newspapers also it's been saying that, you know, they've been saying if you are vaxxed, go and take a booster. Now, what if I've taken a booster already? So what happens to people like this? Are they, I don't think they are completely out of the danger zone. Would you say that? Would you say that you have to take all the precautions? Only thing is that, God forbid, if you get it, then the severity will be much less.
Yes, that is especially true in the first part of the pandemic when this was an all-new virus and nobody had any immune memory of it. And that's really why the virus caused so many deaths in the early part of the pandemic. So vaccines served as a method of giving immune memory without putting the person through the risk of an actual infection, which in fact was a risky proposition, especially for adults. For children, it really did not make much of a difference.
Right.
But for adults, especially older adults, going through natural infection to get the so-called immunity was not an option. But that is where that was the role of the vaccine. They did a fine job in terms of keeping the severity down and also eliminated or decreased or prevented many deaths. There's no doubt about that. Now, if you go to Act 2 of the virus, it kept changing itself far away from what the original strain was. So the vaccines used in India are based on the original strain, which is apparently from Wuhan, which is not in circulation anymore. So we are vaccinating against an outdated version of the virus. I don't know if that makes any scientific sense to me. We are adequately vaccinated already. We have generated immune memory, which means that even if we get an infection, the memory is going to wake up. So I don't see why we should repeatedly use the same old virus-based vaccine. There's really no data on that, on how good, what incremental benefit it's going to give you if you keep giving yourself those doses. So I don't have an answer for that. The vaccines used in the West primarily are mRNA-based products. These are new technology products, which, to my understanding, they need to be given in repeated doses. So it's perhaps that the way these vaccines are formulated, maybe they lead to a faster decline in immunity. I do not know, but they do give boosters every now and then. They're not very popular because in the US, only 17% of adults have chosen to take the booster, which is based on the XBB.1.5, which is a relatively recent strain of the virus. But that being said, JN.1 is so different from XBB.1.5. So it's already moved away from the most recent vaccine that they've made. So we don't have a definite answer on the booster situation, except to say that people who are vulnerable must talk with their doctors to see if they need any additional precautions.
All right. Before I let you go, Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, you keep saying that this is different. It is not like the usual. I mean, should we be panicking at all, or we should just relax but take all the precautions? Because panic adds to problems. That's what doctors say. If you do not relax, the injection will hurt you more. I've heard this since I was a baby.
Right. Panic is created, as you know, from lack of clarity. So we must remain in the know throughout, look at the facts as they evolve, look at the data and make sensible decisions, and also communicate clearly to the public, which is pretty much what we're doing right now, which is a great thing. So I think people who watch such programs will become less panicky, if you will. Overall, the other extreme is also not good. Many people trivialize it, saying that COVID is over, COVID is nothing but a common cold. Now, let me state that very clearly. COVID is not the common cold any more than polio is a cause of diarrhea. Because polio causes diarrhea, yes, of course. But what we fear polio is not because of the diarrhea part of it. It's because of the paralysis part of it. Likewise, COVID, unlike the cold viruses, it affects the blood vessels.
Right.
And this is not something that we want infecting us again and again. And that's something that scientists have said repeatedly. Please try to avoid getting infected to the extent possible. This is not the common cold from that standpoint. It's true that the initial symptoms are that of a common cold, but there ends the similarity.
Dr. Rajiv Jaidevan, it's such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining the South Indian. Thank you indeed. This is about my beloved Tamil Nadu. It seems like one problem gets over and the other begins, but I am not really cherry picking on Tamil Nadu alone. It could happen anywhere. But considering this is the South Indian show, we need to focus particularly on what's going on in Tamil Nadu. Like I said, it's been continuous after the damage and destruction unleashed by cyclone Migjaum. Southern Tamil Nadu has witnessed relentless rains creating havoc. A red alert has been sounded for Virudunagar, Madurai and Theni districts, while an orange alert is in place for Thoothukudi, Dindigul, Kanyakumari, Coimbatore, Tirupur and Sivagangai. Schools and colleges remain shut in Tirunelveli, Thoothukudi, Tenkasi and Kanyakumari. The deluge, intensified by cyclonic circulation, has caused extensive damage, causing disruption to everyday life. The 4 districts bore the worst brunt, even as rain refused to cease in the areas and homes were flooded, streets were waterlogged and people were just praying for rains to give them some respite. Look at those visuals on your screen right now. Kayalpattinam in Thoothukudi emerged as the focal point, recording 932 mm of rainfall in just 24 hours, surpassing the annual rainfall and standing as the highest ever recorded rainfall in the state. What was worse was that the Manimuttar Dam, located in Tirunelveli, released 10,000 cubic feet of water even as it poured heavily all day long amid the heavy rains in the districts on Monday. The water level in the Amaravati Dam increased to 10,000 cubic feet per second, adding to the woes of the people in Tirupur. Southern districts of Tamil Nadu inundated on your screens right now. Look at the flow of water. There is a rage as it seems. Rain gods not relenting at all. Continuous rains, flood-like situation. Trains have been cancelled. Flights, of course, have been cancelled. Schools and colleges have been shut. The government of Tamil Nadu is gearing up with teams of NDRF and SDRF, all of them on standby as landslides have been reported in Kumuli, Kampamette and Podimette in Theni. Water level crossed 4 feet in Kanyakumari district, submerging paddy fields as the river is in spate. Relief camps have been established for those affected in low-lying areas. So far, around 7,500 people have been evacuated and they have been sent to live in 84 relief camps. The Army, Navy and Air Force are all on high alert, and 84 boats have been deployed for rescue and relief operations. Train services disrupted, cancellations announced for several routes like Tirunelveli, Tiruchendur section and between Sri Vaikuntham and Seidunangalur. The state transport surface has also been severely impacted. Even as the Tamil Nadu government is busy distributing 6,000 rupees to those impacted by cyclone Migdom, the government is also on high alert for any emergency emerging out of this deluge. Chief Minister Muka Stalin has appointed ministers and IAS officers to monitor the situation in districts including Tirunelveli, Thoothukudi, Tenkasi and Kanyakumari. The Chief Minister is also scheduled to visit New Delhi on Tuesday and also to request the centre, particularly Prime Minister Modi, if a special grant could be given to the state even as it battles a never seen before deluge of rains. This is southern Tamil Nadu, ladies and gents, where after cyclone Migdom, this is yet again what has happened. I am going to leave you with some visuals. Take a look at that and then I come back to you. Just soak in how much suffering there must be in southern Tamil Nadu. Those are the visuals on your screen right now. Look at the way the ground actually caved in, even as the water is swirling both above and below the ground. Those are the visuals of incessant, unrelenting rain in southern Tamil Nadu. Up next, there is, of course, we are going to watch a special documentary. Before I leave you with these visuals, this special documentary is News9's. It's called First Person by P.V. Vishwanath. It's a first person explores unheard stories, his story in his own words. I leave you with that special documentary. And with that, the South Indian says, Vanakkam, goodbye, stay well.